Hey y'all, today I'm sharing 6 of my favorite recipes made with ground beef. Alright, so to start out with, you're going to go ahead and get your potatoes ready because we're going to need to do this in the morning because this is going to be a soup that we're going to be able to put in our crock pot and just let it cook all day long so we don't have to worry about it. And it's, you know, a couple of tiny steps at the end of the day and your dinner is done. So go ahead and get your potatoes all peeled up. And I always feel like I need to put this disclaimer out there. If you are not comfortable peeling your potatoes with a knife, holding them in your hand, then please don't do it. Use your potato peeler or however it is that you can safely peel your potatoes. Because I would hate for y'all to do this because you think this is how you have to do it and then you cut a finger off and then I feel terrible. So anyway, just peel your potatoes, y'all. And you're going to need about 4 medium-sized potatoes or 3 little ones and a big old humongous one like I did. So then once we get our potatoes all good and washed up and get all that dirt off of them, we're going to go ahead and get them diced up. Now, you don't want to dice them too small because we are going to let this cook all day long, and you don't want your potatoes to just kind of disintegrate into nothing, but you also don't want them so big that, you know, they're way bigger than a bite. You know what I mean? You want them to be bite size. So about the size you see me cutting them up is what, you know, will work just fine. My potatoes held together just fine, y'all. So once you get your taters all cut up, put those in your crock pot, and then you're going to cut up 1 onion and put that in your crock pot too. Now I wish I would have had a bigger onion, but y'all know the debacle I had with them tiny onions I got. So let's not bring those bad memories back up. I'm going to get my own onions tomorrow, y'all. So anyway, go ahead, potatoes, onions in your crock pot. So now we're going to add in 1 container, 32-ounce container, or 4 cups of chicken broth. Now, I normally have chicken broth, like homemade chicken broth, and I do have some in the freezer, but I didn't think ahead and take it out. So I'm using a box. It's just fine. Use what you have. I'm also using low sodium. Use what you have. But if you don't have low sodium, just make sure you kind of watch the amount of salt that you put in there because you don't want it to be too salty. Okay, so now we're going to season it up a little bit. Now I'm adding some onion powder and some garlic powder, and then I'm going to add in some of this Kinder's caramelized onion butter. Now I love the caramelized onion burger flavor, but I haven't been able to find it lately. I'm going to Sam's tomorrow though, and I'm hoping they have it. So then I added a little salt and pepper. But what I'm doing is I'm seasoning this soup the same way that I would season a hamburger. So if you were going to be making burgers on the grill or burgers on the stove or whatever, that's the seasonings you want to put in this soup because it's a cheeseburger soup. So you want it to taste like what your cheeseburger would taste like, right? Doesn't that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So season it with whatever seasonings you like. Then we're going to put I'm going to put my insert down in the other part of the crock pot. But we're going to turn our crock pot on. Of course, put the lid on it. Turn it on. Look, plug it in. Don't ask me how I know you need to plug it in because y'all are... Okay, let's not talk about that. Let's move on. Okay, so anyway, crock pot on, lid on, low 6 to 8 hours. Or if you don't have that much time, high for 4 to 5, okay? So that's what we're going to do. Okay, so now we need some bacon because we're making bacon cheeseburger soup, right? So the way that I'm going to cook my bacon today is I'm going to put this aluminum foil, tin foil, whatever y'all want to call it, on my cookie sheet or my bacon sheet or whatever you want to call that. And then I'm going to put on as many pieces of bacon that will fit. And I think I fit 8 on there. And I'm going to put this in the oven, 400 degrees, and I cook mine for about 15 minutes because I like mine crispy. Cook it however long you like, you know, the way that you like your bacon. If you like it less crispy, cook it less time. But it's super easy. Once it's done, you take it out and you throw the tinfoil away and, you know, you're done. It's easy cleanup. So anyway, while our bacon's cooking, we're going to go ahead and get our ground beef browned up. Now, this is at the end of the day, y'all. So we let our potatoes and onions cook all day, and about an hour before you're going to eat, you're going to want to do this part. Now, if you're not going to have time when you get home in the evening to do this, then do this in the morning, throw it in with your potatoes, and I'm sure it'll all be just fine if you let it cook all day. You know, it'll be fine, I'm sure. So anyway, cook your ground beef up, and then we're going to drain the grease off, but you're going to need this pan. So once you put your meat over there to drain, leave it over there, wipe your pan out, and then drop in 3 tablespoons of butter, because we're going to make a little cream sauce to put in our soup to make it creamy. So melt you 3 tablespoons of butter. Once your butter is melted, you're going to add in there 3 tablespoons. Look, I got stuff popping everywhere. 3 tablespoons of flour, just regular all-purpose flour. We're making a roux, y'all. So if you know how to make a roux, that's what we're doing. And if you don't know how to make a roux, this is how you do it. So everybody, you know, you can learn something today if you didn't know. So go ahead, like I said, melt your butter, 3 tablespoons of butter, 3 tablespoons of flour. Now, we're not making a gumbo, so this don't need to cook forever and get super dark brown. We're just making a sauce, and we don't need it dark. So let that cook for about 2 to 3 minutes, okay? Then we're going to slowly whisk in, and y'all, don't even say it. I already know, I've known for a year since I've been on YouTube that I need a bigger whisk. And I still forget to buy it every time I go to the store. One of these days, y'all. One of these days, but not today. So slowly add in 2 cups of milk. Now, I didn't have milk. All I had was heavy whipping cream, shockingly. So that's what I used. But you can use milk or heavy whipping cream. Either one will work just fine. You're just going to let that come to a boil. You see how it was bubbling? And that's all you need to do, because we're going to put it in this pot and it'll be just fine. We're just using it to kind of thicken it up. So now we're going to go ahead and add our ground beef in, and then we're going to add in that cream sauce that we made, okay? Because it's getting close to time to eat, y'all, so we got to finish this off, okay? So add in your cream sauce right in the top. See there? It's not super thick, it's not as thick as what a gravy would be. It's still a little bit thin, but you see how thin our soup is right now? Watch in a few minutes, you'll see it's going to get thick. She going to get thick, y'all. So just wait. Just hang on. I know you're on the edge of your seat. So just stir that up, and make sure too, y'all, that you're tasting this along the way. If you need to add a little more seasoning, add some more seasoning. Whatever you need to do seasoning-wise. Just keep a check on that. So then I'm just going to pop the lid on and stick this over to the side, because now my bacon is ready and I need to get it chopped up to add to the pot, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and chop up my bacon. Now, I know y'all see how red my arm is. No, I'm not sunburned. You know what that is? Hot flash. I'm old and I'm falling apart, y'all. Anybody else? Let me know down in the comments. Anybody else just sweat 24 hours a day for no reason? No, just me? Okay, moving on. All right, now that your bacon is all nice and chopped up, go ahead and throw that over into your crock pot. And you see our soup is already starting to thicken up a little bit. See how it's gotten a little bit thicker since we added in that cream sauce? Okay, so now we're going to add the final step. We're going to add in about 2 cups of shredded cheese. Now, I'm using shredded Colby Jack, because that's what I had. If you have Fiesta blend, if you have plain cheddar, whatever you have will work just fine. Whatever you like to put on your burger, okay? If you put mozzarella on your burger, I don't know. I feel like cheddar is kind of always the answer when you do something like this, but do you, whatever kind of cheese you like, throw it in there. You need 2 cups of it. Put the lid on, let it cook for about another 30-45 minutes, okay? Still on low now. We're still on low. And that's it, y'all. Look at this soup. Oh my goodness. Look how thick she got. Look how thick she got, y'all. She is thick. But y'all, this soup is so dang good. Even people in my house, not, but in my life that don't like soup, love this soup. So you have got to give it a try. So to start off with, we're going to go ahead and dice up 1 yellow onion, and this is kind of I guess maybe a medium onion. It's not very big, but you can cut up as much as you like. If you don't like a whole lot of onion, then cut up a little small onion or use half of an onion. Or if you don't like onion at all, you don't have to put this in there. The good thing about stuffed bell peppers is you can really customize what you want inside your bell pepper. This is just the way that I like mine. So I started out by dicing up this onion, and I diced it up pretty small because, like I said, this is going in the meat in the inside of my bell pepper. So I didn't really want huge chunks of onion. So once I got my onion all diced up, I went ahead and got my bell peppers out. Now I had this red and orange bell pepper left over from when I had bought some, I don't know, a couple of days ago. And then I went to Sam's over the weekend and I went ahead and grabbed a big pack of the green bell peppers, and then I had used one of those too. So basically I'm just using what I had. Now a good little trick when you're doing stuffed bell pepper, if you have one that won't sit straight, just trim the bottom up a little bit, and then it will go ahead and sit straight for you. The problem with this little bell pepper is that once I did that and I cut the top off, there wasn't a whole lot of bell pepper left, but I kind of went with it and thought, well, maybe I'll use it, but I end up not using it, but y'all see that in a minute. So I just go ahead and cut the, the little white veins, ribs, whatever, out of my bell peppers. Remove the seeds, of course. And then on the tops that you cut off, just cut the colored part off of there, because we're going to chop that up to use inside of our stuffed bell peppers. So we're not wasting hardly any of these bell peppers. So I went ahead and washed my bell peppers up, and make sure that you drain the water out of those as good as you can. And then you're going to pop these in the oven for about 15 minutes or so, because we don't necessarily want a fully crunchy bell pepper, when we make our stuffed bell peppers. And bell peppers take a while to cook. So go ahead, if you cook them a little bit ahead of time, they'll be softer when you cook it, when you stuff them and put them back in. So just let those sit in the oven while you're getting this all done. And again, I just took my bell peppers, the one that I ended up not using, and then the tops that I had, and I just cut them into little small dices, and that's what I used to put inside my bell pepper. Isn't that pretty, y'all? Look at all that color. So then you're going to take your ground beef, just 1 pound of ground beef, or you can use ground turkey or chicken or whatever you like. And I go ahead and break it up just a little bit in my pan, and y'all see back on that back burner I've got my rice cooking. So go ahead and just chop your meat up and start it browning, and then we're going to go ahead and add up our little diced onion, and we're going to add in our little bell peppers that we chopped up. So get those all added in, and then we're going to cook these until, I cook mine until, of course, your meat is brown, and then your onion and your bell peppers are pretty soft. And that's another reason that it's good to chop these up into small pieces, y'all, because then they don't take so long to cook, when you're mixing them up in your meat like this, because you don't want a bunch of crunchy bell pepper and onion inside your bell pepper. So once I got my meat cooked and all drained, I went ahead and added 1 can of diced tomatoes. These are the little petite diced. And again, if you don't like tomato, or you don't want this much tomato, feel free to put as much or as little as you want inside yours. Again, this is just the way that I like it. This is just to give y'all an idea, and then you can kind of customize it how you want it. Then I go ahead and add about 1/2 of a can of just regular old tomato sauce. Now, if you have some spaghetti sauce or pizza sauce or something that's already seasoned, you can absolutely use that, but I didn't have any, so I went ahead and just went with a regular can of tomato sauce. So once I got my tomato sauce in there, I went ahead and added a little bit of garlic powder, some onion powder, of course. Y'all already knew that was going to go in there, but you just want to season this up. Season it however you like it, okay? Then I added just a little bit of parsley flakes, and y'all, I honestly don't know if parsley really does a whole lot except look pretty when you put it in stuff, because I never noticed the taste. But I put a little in there, and then I add a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper, and then we're going to go ahead and just stir that up really, really good, and just get it mixed around to where everything's good and incorporated. Then, of course, I tasted it, because you got to taste what you cook. And I decided it needed a little Uncle Tony's in there, y'all. So I went ahead and added me a little bit of Creole seasoning in there. Again, you can use Tony's or Slap Your Mama or whatever kind of Creole seasoning you like. Or if you don't like Creole seasoning, I think you're wrong, but that's okay. Don't put it in there. So just make sure, whenever you put your seasonings in, just mix it up really, really well. And you see there's no oil down in there. I drained all that grease out. Then we're just going to go ahead and add about a half a cup, or about a cup, not a half a cup, about a cup of rice. And you can use instant rice. You can use regular rice. You can get one of those like the Uncle Ben's seasoned rices, and you can use that if you want to, just whatever you have. Or you could use brown rice, quinoa, whatever you want to put in your stuffed bell peppers, y'all. So you're just going to go ahead and mix this around really, really good. And we're going to let that cook down just a little bit. Then we're going to add some cheese. Now, I had grabbed this cheese at the Target when I was there. And I've never used their reduced fat cheese before. And it's good, y'all, but it is stringy. You're going to see in a minute. It is very melty when you put it inside something. So go ahead and just mix that around really, really well, because at this point, my fire's off. I'm just getting it, getting the cheese in there and getting it good and melted. And, if you don't like a lot of cheese, y'all, you don't have to put cheese in the middle of your bell pepper, but I like it in mine, so that's what I did. And like I said, you can see, look how stringy that cheese is, y'all. It is very, very cheesy. Look at this. My goodness gracious, that's some stringy cheese. So anyway, remember that half a can that we saved of that tomato sauce? Well, we're going to go ahead and put that in a bowl and season that up, just using the same seasonings that we put in our meat mixture. And the reason I did this, because you don't want a really good seasoned bell pepper and then the sauce you put on top to be bland. So again, if you have pizza sauce, spaghetti sauce, whatever, you can use that and it'll already be seasoned. But if you don't and you use tomato sauce, the half a can you don't put in your meat mixture, just season it up with those same seasonings so your pepper will have flavor, all the way through it. So now we take our little peppers out of the oven, and y'all, when you take those peppers out of the oven, they're gonna have some water in them. Dump that water out, because you don't want a whole lot of water in your pepper when you stuff it. You don't want it to be all liquidy and gross. So we're going to go ahead and just stuff these peppers. And I did 6 good sized peppers, and this meat mixture was enough to stuff all 6 of my peppers. So you see me fighting that cheese. Y'all, that was the stringiest cheese. Look at that. Look at that cheese. And now look, I'm complaining because it was hard to get into the peppers, but I was not complaining when I was eating them, because it sure was good. But just go ahead and you want to stuff all your peppers. And I go back and add a little to the first 2. You just want to get them full. Just use all your mixture up. So then we're going to take that tomato sauce that we seasoned up real good, and you're just going to put a little spoonful right over the top. And it gives it some flavor, gives your cheese something to sit on in a minute, and it keeps that like the rice that's at the top of your pepper, it keeps that from burning and getting hard and crunchy while it's in the oven, because you don't really want hard crunchy rice in your bell peppers. So we're just going to spread this out right over top of our little bell peppers. And a lot of people put this down in the bottom of their pan, and you can certainly do that if you want to. I was just trying to keep mine neat, y'all. So we're going to pop this back in the oven for about 10 or 15 minutes, let it cook. Then we're going to take it out, and we're going to add our cheese, just our little bit of cheese right on top of each one of our peppers. Now, I'm using mozzarella and I'm using reduced fat. You can use full fat, you can use cheddar cheese, mixed shredded cheese, whatever kind of cheese you like. I just had this mozzarella, so that's what I used. So I popped it back in the oven for about 20-25 minutes, and this is what they look like when they come out. Now, you see how they're wrinkly right there? That just means they're good and soft. Now, I didn't want them too soft because I did freeze some of these. But y'all, this stuff on the inside of these doggone peppers is so good. Like, I am telling you, you could just eat it and not even need the darn bell pepper. But of course, the bell pepper is good. So to start out with, we're going to take 2 packs. This is just 1 pound packs of ground beef right from the Walmart. And just make sure that your hands are good and clean before you start touching on the food. And if you have an aversion to touching meat like this, y'all, feel free to put a glove on, or whatever you want to do. Now, I like to break my meat up, and all I'm doing is kind of crumbling it, because I don't want these hamburgers to kind of have that really packed consistency of like a meatball, because I don't like meatballs, y'all. But that's another story for another day. We're not going to talk about that right now. So I just went ahead and crumbled it up. Now I went ahead and washed my hands, of course, and then I'm gonna go ahead and get this meat seasoned up. So I started out with a little bit of garlic powder, and then I'm gonna add in some onion powder. And then we're gonna add us a little bit of Uncle Tony's. We're gonna put a little bit of that Creole seasoning in there, add a little more flavor. And then we're gonna add some pepper and just a little bit of salt, because we're gonna add something else, and you know, some of the other things that we add in here, you know, may have a little salt too. So we don't wanna add a ton of salt to this. So just a little bit will be fine. So once we add that, now we're gonna go ahead and add in some onion soup mix. And I know I'm fancy, I have the Lipton, but feel free to use the Great Value because that's what I normally get, but they didn't have any. So then we're gonna add about roughly, because you know I didn't measure it, but it's about maybe a tablespoon-ish of Worcestershire salt. See, I can't say it, y'all. Worcestershire. Worcestershire. Y'all know what it is. And then you're going to add 1 egg. Now, you can add some breadcrumbs if you would like to, but again, I don't want this to be meatball-ish. So I just added 1 little egg, and that's not really much egg for this amount of meat. So what you're going to do is just go ahead and kind of stir this around. I sped this up so it looks like I'm just mangling it, but I'm not. I'm just still you know, crumpling the meat and just trying to make sure that everything gets really good and incorporated in there. But I don't want to, you know, just overwork it and squeeze the meat to death. So once you get your meat seasoned up and you get it all mixed up good, you're going to go ahead, and since I had 2 packs of ground beef, I'm going to make 8 patties. So you're just going to go ahead, and however you make a patty, I just try not to overwork them, like I said, too much right here. And then I try to kind of press them out a little bit. I don't want them real thick because I want them to cook, and you know, I don't really like thick hamburgers. But you see them little pieces of onion from that onion soup mix? Y'all, these burgers have a ton of flavor. So you're just going to go ahead and get your burgers all made up. And like I said, this will make 8, but now if you like smaller burgers, you can definitely make them smaller. If you like a thicker burger, you can make them thicker. Do them, you know, however you like them, however your family likes them. Just make the patties. That's basically the thing. So once you get your little patties all made, you're going to just set them over to the side, wash your hands up real good, and then we're going to get some onion cut up. Now you can leave this onion in rings if you want to. I just kind of sliced it in like, you know, half rings, because that's just the way that I like mine. Now you can also feel free to dice them if you want to. I like the flavor of the onion, and I like the pieces of onion in mine. I had a little bad spot I had to cut off, y'all. But so that's why I did mine this way. Now, also, you really only need 1 onion for this, but because I really like onion, I went ahead and did 2. And that's a lot of onion, y'all. But you know what? It turns out fine. It's fabulous and it's wonderful. So, once you get your onion all chopped up, just put it over to the side. You're going to use it in a minute, and we're going to go ahead and add just a tiny bit of oil to your cast iron skillet or whatever skillet you're using, and that'll help keep, you know, your burgers from sticking down to your pan. And then you're just going to cook. For me, the size of my skillet, I just cooked 4 of these at a time. And you don't necessarily have to cook them completely through, but I pretty much did because I had my fire too hot. So, but that's okay. It turned out fine. They're not burned, I promise. They're just very seasoned. They're very cooked, y'all. But that's okay because I don't mind mine like that. And we're going to put them down in gravy in a minute. So don't worry about them being dried out if you turn your pan on too hot like I did. So once you get all your burgers cooked up, look at how much grease I had left in this pan. Well, I got to get something to touch it with first because it was hot. But you're going to have a lot of grease left over, and you do not need all that grease to make the gravy. So I went over and I poured out the majority of that oil that was left in there. I just left a little bit, just enough to pretty much cover the bottom of my pan, because I'm going to go ahead now and saute these onions up. And you're going to go ahead and just cook these. Now you can put them in there. You can break them up before you put them in your pan or however you want to do them. But they will break up, break apart as they cook, from each other. See, like that. So once I get mine to about this stage, I go ahead and drop a half a stick of butter in because we need something to make our roux with, to make our gravy, right? So I'll go ahead and I would cook these down, and that way the onions can kind of soak up some of that butter flavor too. And since I had so many onions, I went ahead and just pushed my onions over to one side. Now, this is I think about a third of a cup. I think that was a third cup, like measuring cup. So I started out with just a little bit, stirred it in to see how much flour I was going to need, because you don't want to add too much. And I needed a little more, so I added some more and I stirred it around a little bit. And then I was like, well, I ain't got but just a tiny bit left. So I just went ahead and dumped the rest of it in there. So I used about a third of a cup of flour for this, y'all. And that's exactly how I wanted it, where you can see the bottom of that pan. So go ahead and just cook this down for a couple of minutes until your flour is cooked, because you don't want this to taste like flour. So I just cook it down till it browns up a little bit. And then I go ahead and add some beef broth to it. Now start out slow, because you don't, if you get it too watery at this point, you can't really do much to it to thicken it back up, other than just cooking it. So I just add a little bit of beef broth at a time. And I think that container had about a cup in it, and then I added a can, because I only had a little bit left in that box. So about a can and a cup is what I ended up using. And I made a good bit of gravy because I had a bunch of burgers. And the only reason I cooked this many, because y'all know it's just me and the cat here, and he don't eat hamburger steak and gravy. But my son was going to come over after work and get some. And I had somebody ask me, why did my son not live with me? And I don't know if y'all don't realize, but my children are both grown. So my son doesn't live with me because he's a grown man and he has his own house. So that's the answer to that question for y'all. So anyway, once you get your burgers all cooked and your gravy made up, you're going to go ahead and just put your burgers right down in your gravy. And I like to kind of flip mine around so they're kind of covered with gravy on both sides. And then I just let them simmer for about 15-20 minutes and just flip them over every now and then. And this is what they look like, y'all, when it's all done. I just made me some frozen green beans that I sauteed up. But y'all, these hamburger steaks have so much flavor in them. All the stuff that we mix in with that meat in the beginning just gives these the best flavor. You are really, really going to enjoy these. So I expect that all of y'all will be making this hamburger steak and gravy very soon. All right, to start out with, we're going to go ahead and get our veggies prepped. Now, I am using, look, a dull knife, clearly. I don't know what was up with the skin of this onion, but that was the toughest onion skin I ever tried to cut through in my life. And after this video, y'all, rest assured, I did go and sharpen my knife, just in case it was not the onion's fault. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and dice me up this onion, and then I'm going to also dice up some bell pepper. Now, if you want to use mushrooms, you most certainly can if you like mushrooms in your Philly cheesesteak. I don't care for mushrooms in mine, so I'm not going to add them, but just know you can add them if you want to, okay? So you could definitely make a traditional Philly cheesesteak if you like them. They are so delicious. If you've never had one, I highly recommend that you try them. I did make a video of the regular Philly cheesesteak sandwiches. I will link that down below for y'all, and I'll put it up above, and that way y'all will have access to that if you want to try to make the real thing. It's super simple and so good. But anyway, this is just a little bit cheaper, quicker version of this, and you can also make this low carb if you just don't put it on a bun. It's good enough to just eat it out of the bowl, I'm telling y'all. All right, now that we got our little veggies all prepped up, I'm going to go ahead and to a pan on my stove, I'm going to go ahead and get some ground beef cooked up, okay? Now, a lot of times I cook my vegetables with my ground beef, but for this, because we're not going to cook it a long time afterwards, and I like my vegetables soft, I'm going to cook them separate, okay? But you could certainly throw it all in there together if you want to. So I'm just going to get this meat browned up, and then once my meat is all browned, I'm going to drain it, and then I'm just going to reuse this pan for the next step in this cheesesteak journey that we're taking together. Now look, I never said this was authentic, so y'all don't come for me and tell me I put cheese whiz on it and all that other stuff. This is how I make mine. This is the way I like mine. You make yours with whatever cheese you want to, okay? All right. So once you've taken your meat out of the pan, just leave it over there draining or whatever it's doing. And then you're going to take about 2 tablespoons of butter and melt those in your skillet. And then we're just going to add our onions and bell peppers to this. And you're just going to cook these down until you get them as soft as you want them. If you like them to be a little bit crunchy, then don't cook them as long. If you like them to be softer, then cook them till they're soft. And don't worry about the stuff on the bottom of the pan. We're going to get all that up at some point, okay? So I went ahead and added just a little bit of salt and pepper at this stage of the cooking. Just a little salt and pepper. And I just kept on cooking, okay? Because I found if I put like garlic powder and stuff, when I'm having to saute vegetables for a long time, sometimes it likes to stick to the bottom and almost kind of burn. I don't know, maybe it's just me. It could be user error, I don't know. But anyway, that's why I don't put all that in when I have to cook these down for a long time. Okay, once your veggies get as soft as you want them, go ahead and add your ground meat back in there and just mix it up. And I don't know if I said it, that's probably a little over a pound. All you need is a pound, but I never measure when I split mine into Ziploc bags. So we're going to call it a pound, even if that ain't what it is. Then you're going to add in a 1/2 cup of beef broth and 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. So yes, that was beef broth. I know it looked a little milky, but that was just because I had mixed cornstarch into it, okay? That should help you get that stuff up off the bottom of your pan. So make sure you scrape down there because that's good stuff down on the bottom of that pan. All right, so now I just added a little bit of season. I added a little bit of garlic powder, a little bit of onion powder. I don't add a whole lot of extra stuff to this just because I like it to taste the way that it's going to taste. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't want it to taste like another kind of seasoning. So then I added in about 2 tablespoons or so of Worcestershire sauce. Clearly I didn't measure it, but it's close. It's pretty close, y'all. You can add a little more if you want a little bit more of that flavor in your meat, but you know, hey, do you. I'm just here as your guide. I'm just giving you the idea. You can run as far as you want to with it. So anyway, I just cooked that up. Just get everything good and mixed in. Let that liquid kind of absorb into your meat or cook into your meat. And then this is another thing that's completely optional. I add in, that's probably about 1/4 cup of mozzarella cheese. You don't have to. You certainly do not have to. It is not going to make a difference whether you add this or not. But I just kind of like that little bit of gooey cheese in the middle of these. And it's not much, obviously, you know, because that's a tiny bit of cheese for that huge pan of meat. But I use provolone when I make my Philly cheesesteak, so that's what I'm using on this too. And if you've ever used provolone, it doesn't melt as well, to me anyway. It doesn't melt down as well as like mozzarella and stuff does. So I just added a tiny bit of mozzarella in mine. And then I just put a little bit of butter, or you can put a little oil, whatever, on your buns. And then I just toasted those up. Don't look at my crusty stove. Anywho, once your little buns are all nice and toasted, and you do want to toast your buns because if you put this hot meat directly onto a non-toasted bun, just like a regular old soft bun, your whole bottom bun is just going to be wet, okay? Because it's got, you know, a little bit of juice in it, and of course it's super hot. So highly recommend toast your buns. Then you just add a little bit of meat on there, and then I added a slice of provolone, and then I take a metal bowl and flip it upside down over the top of my little plate just to let the steam kind of melt that cheese down. And that's all there is to it. Now, if you want it way more melted, you can pop it in the microwave if you want to. Completely up to you. But this is it. Y'all, these things are so dang good. And they're so simple to throw together. Like, super easy. And I never really liked regular Sloppy Joes, but these I could eat every day. And then here is what you can do if you are looking for something low carb. Just put it in a bowl, melt your cheese over the top, and that's it. To start off, I am just going to make one of these little packets of Spanish rice. Now, you can use whatever kind of rice you want. You can use plain white rice if you want to. But this Spanish rice just tastes really good. And I just make sure that I whisk it when I use one of these little packets, because sometimes the seasoning part of it gets kind of clumpy. So you're just going to make that according to your package directions. And then I'm just going to heat up a little can of refried beans. So I got my beans all heated up and I scooted them over, and then I moved my rice to that back burner because I'm going to go ahead and get my taco meat done. Now, this is some taco meat, clearly, y'all, that I had in the freezer. And I am just going to take it out and put it in this pan. I add a little bit of water to it just so it doesn't, get all dried out. And then you're just going to let it really slowly reheat. Now, normally I would do this maybe in the microwave, but since I'm going to be using a pan anyway, I didn't want to dirty up an extra bowl. So this is the way I'm going to do it. So as you can see, you just cook it real slow, and then you get it all back to normal taco meat status. And then once your rice is done, you're just going to add a couple of spoonfuls of your rice right into your meat. Now, I just kind of eyeball how much I like in there. You can add as much or as little as you want. And I mean, really, y'all, you don't have to add rice at all if you don't want to. But this is a really good way to just bulk up a burrito and make it a complete meal where you're actually going to be full when you eat the darn thing. So I just mix my rice around in there. And of course, you've got your seasoning in your rice mix, and then you have, it was taco meat that we had made before, so the meat's already seasoned good. And then you got some rice that's seasoned all good. So you don't need to add any extra seasoning to this, y'all. So I just added a little bit of that corn that I had left over. And then I'm also going to add in a little bit of the black beans that we had left over. And this, y'all, I had this stuff left over from when I had made some nachos, and that'll be in a video coming up. But I just, you hate to throw anything away, so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to save all this. And I accidentally put the darn taco meat in the freezer. I didn't really mean to do that. But it's all good because you see we can just reheat it right on back up. So you just want to let that simmer together a little bit so all the little flavors can get combined. And that's it, y'all. We're going to make us some burritos. Now, if you are enjoying my video, I post every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5. So make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss anything. Now, these burritos are going to be big because I had the really big, I guess they're the burrito tortillas, but anyway, they're the real big ones, y'all. They're like 10 inches, I think. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know how big they are, y'all, but they're big. So I'm going to start out by putting a little layer of my refried beans. And you don't have to do refried beans if you don't like refried beans. Or you can do more than I use. You can do a little bit less. I do like to spread my beans out all over my tortilla because I don't necessarily like, when I'm eating like a beef burrito, I don't like to bite into a huge bite of nothing but refried beans. But I do like the refried beans. So I just spread them out just over the whole thing. And that way when you roll it up, you'll have, it'll be pretty even throughout your little burrito. So just spread all that out. And then you're going to take your meat and rice and beans and corn. You're going to take your meat mixture. And you're just going to plop that down. And like I said, these are really big burritos, or really big tortillas, y'all. So I made sure to put a good bit of filling. And I wasn't real sure how much, because I'm just using leftover meat. So I wasn't real sure how much I was going to have. So I just did a little at a time. So I just did 2 pretty good spoonfuls of my mixture. And then I added a little bit of cheese to the top of each one. And then I'm going to go ahead and just get these all rolled up. Now, you can add, I'm going to put some of these in the freezer. So I didn't want to put like lettuce and stuff on here. But if you're gonna eat it right away, go ahead and add you some salsa, lettuce, sour cream, whatever you want. Just, whatever you like in a burrito. You could even put some cheese dip or something in there, like the queso dip. You could put some of that in there if you wanted to. Now, this is how I seal my burritos, y'all. I just put a little bit of the refried bean right there on the edge, and look, it seals it right on down, so nothing's gonna fall out. But like I was saying, you can do any kind of toppings that you want. You could do a Mexican blend cheese. I just had cheddar, so that's what I used. And just bulk up whatever. Add just some extra tomatoes in there. Whatever you want. Just make sure you seal your little burritos up, y'all, so they don't come flapping open. So I ended up having enough. Oh, look at there. Perfect. So I ended up having enough to do 3 big burritos with the meat mixture. And then I also thought, I do have some subscribers that are vegetarian. So I thought, I'll make just a bean and cheese burrito so you can see that also. I mean, I know it's pretty easy, but just so you can see that there are options. And you also, if you don't do meat, you can also put just the rice and stuff in there. However you want to do it. You can make these with chicken too. But I was going to eat one of these, y'all. So I went ahead and this is a nonstick pan, but I like a little, make sure I get a good little crust on my burrito. So I just sprayed a little bit of cooking oil in there. And then you just let it sit there and brown, and this will go on and melt your cheese. And look at there, y'all. I also stood it up on each side and let it just kind of, because I wasn't real sure where my cheese had ended up, and I wanted to make sure it was good and melted. So I got all the sides of this burrito browned. And then I just cut it in half. And look at that, y'all. Oh my gosh, this is so good, and it's so filling. Alright, so here we go. This is what I did with my extra burritos. Now don't panic, because these are just going to be for me. So don't panic when you see my arm laid across my darn saran wrap, y'all. But you just put your burrito right there in the center. And then you're just going to fold up one side and then fold up the other side, and then just gather up the 2 ends and fold those under. And that's it. When you get ready to eat these, you can take them out and put them in your refrigerator and let them thaw overnight. If you want to do that, and then you can just, brown them in your pan like I did. Or you can take them out frozen, unwrap them from the plastic wrap, wrap them in a damp paper towel, and then just heat them until they're heated through. Now, I'm not real sure how long to tell you to reheat, because it's really going to depend on the size of your burrito. So just kind of, put it in there, I would say, for 30 seconds and check it. Maybe, just kind of keep checking on it and make sure, that it's done, that it's good and cooked. But y'all, this is what she looks like. Oh my gosh, these burritos are so good. They're so inexpensive to make. You can put as little or as much as you want. If all you have is meat and cheese, then make you some meat and cheese burritos. But they're great. You can make them ahead. You can freeze them. You'll have them for lunches. Or you can just have these, for a meal anyway. They got so much good stuff in them. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is get our sauce together. You're going to need about 1 pound of ground beef and an onion, okay? And I had my onion already cut up. Sometimes if I get a big bag of onions, I'll go ahead and cut them all up and then put a bunch of it in the freezer. And that way I don't have to cut up an onion every time I'm going to cook, right? So I'm going to use I'm going to catch what I'm throwing away over there. But I'm going to use about, however much, about an onion, 1 onion. Okay, so 1 pound of ground beef, 1 onion. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get this all browned up. And then once you get it browned up, make sure that you drain any excess grease off of it, okay? You don't want to leave any grease in your sauce. And you could certainly do your sauce homemade if you wanted to. I actually have a really good homemade marinara sauce, and maybe I'll do that on the channel for y'all one day. I found it years ago. But anyway, I'm going to use jarred sauce today, but do whatever you want, okay? So the pasta that I'm going to use today is this Bonza pasta. It's made from chickpeas. Now I'm making a half recipe, so this is an 8-ounce box. If you're making a full recipe, you'll need 2 boxes of this. But y'all, it's loaded with protein and fiber, and I was really kind of leery about it, but it is delicious. So I'm going to get that boiling while I'm getting my sauce together. So once you get your meat browned and drained, you're going to add 1 jar of whatever kind of spaghetti sauce. I'm using this ragu with no sugar added. Look, I'm trying to be a little healthier this year, y'all. I'm trying to get myself together. I am trying to get myself together. So I'm trying to just make some cutbacks here and there, make a little, a few changes here and there. Just, I'm getting a little older, a tiny bit older. I'm 29 now, and you got to start watching these kind of things sometimes. So anyway, I used 1 jar of that pasta sauce and then about 1/4 cup of water just to get all of the pasta out of the jar. I'm going to let that come to a boil. Then I'm going to cut it down to a simmer, put the lid on it, and let it simmer, okay? Now for the cheese mixture, I'm going to use 1/2 cup of ricotta. And this is not the full fat. This is the lower fat. Again, this is a place where I'm trying to cut back a little bit, do a little better. Then you're going to need 1/4 cup of the shredded Parmesan cheese. And I get this in a big container at Sam's and just break it down into Ziploc bags and throw it in the freezer, and that way it lasts forever. And then you're going to need an 8-ounce bag of mozzarella cheese. Now, I'm not using the whole bag of mozzarella cheese in here. I'm using about half the bag, maybe a little more than half. But we need some for the top, okay? So make sure you save some for the top. And then you're going to add in 1 egg. Get this all good and mixed up. Now, if you don't want to add your mozzarella to this part, you could just do the ricotta and the Parmesan and the egg and then just sprinkle on your mozzarella. But, I mean, if it's all going in there anyway, I figured what the heck is the point? I just mix mine all together, okay? And again, I'm doing a half recipe. That's what's going to be down in the description box for y'all. But if you wanted to do a full recipe, just double what I have written, and that would make a 9x13 pan, okay? But I'm telling you, this stuff is super, super filling, okay? Because, maybe because I use the high protein pasta or whatever. And just to let y'all know, I don't like wheat pasta. I don't like the texture or the taste of it. So I was a little leery about the chickpea pasta, but it is delicious. You cannot tell a difference. And of course, I'm not sponsored, but I'm just wanting to let y'all know that in case y'all are kind of wanting to get a little bit healthier like I am. Okay, so to my cheese mixture, I just added a little bit of pepper. I'm not adding any salt because this cheese is salty enough as it is. But make sure you're tasting your pasta, your sauce, and adjust the seasonings there if you need to. Okay, so when we get ready to put this together, when you cook your pasta, cook it a little less than what the box time tells you to, because you don't want it super, super mushy, or it's going to get really mushy when you cook it in the oven, okay? So we're going to do this sort of like a lasagna, okay? So do half of your pasta and then half of your sauce. And I just make sure that I put the sauce, to where, because it's plenty of sauce. So I just make sure that I, put it around all the edges and everything, because I don't want any of my noodles to not be covered. I don't want to eat this and bite into a crunchy noodle. Does that make sense? So I just make sure, you see me doing that or going around the edges and stuff, I'm just making sure every noodle is covered in pasta sauce, okay? Or in our sauce. I guess of course it's pasta sauce. And I know that baked ziti is a certain type of pasta, but I can never find it, and I don't think it matters anyway, so I always use rotini noodles in mine, but use whatever you want, whatever you have. So then you're going to take half of that cheese mixture, and I just kind of split it in half in the bowl, and you're going to put little dollops of that over the top of your sauce, okay? And if you put 1 big spoonful, it's just harder to spread, in my opinion. So I just put little scoops of it on there, and then just kind of use the very end of my little tiny rubber spatula there to kind of spread it out. Now, if it mixes in with your sauce a little bit or whatever, if it doesn't spread completely out, is it going to be the end of the world? No. Is it going to make a difference? Absolutely not. It's all going to mix together as it cooks anyway. But I just kind of like to get the layers in there, if I can. So now we're going to add some provolone cheese. I already know, but trust me on this one, okay? this makes the whole dish. You got to add the provolone cheese. Because I'm making just a little half recipe, I used 3 pieces in each layer. So I used the 2 whole pieces and then I tore that piece. I don't even think I tear it in the second part. But you just want to layer that on. Then we're just going to go back and layer everything else just like we just did. You're going to use the other half of your pasta, the other half of your sauce, the other half of your cheese, okay? Again, we're layering this just like lasagna. And if I didn't say this already, because I'm notorious for feeling like I don't say things, even if I did, preheat your oven to 375, okay? So go ahead, like I said, layer everything up and just spread it out. And then our final layer for this, once you get your cheese mixture spread out and add the last of your provolone, then you're going to add a little bit more Parmesan cheese and the rest of your mozzarella, okay? Get that on there, get it all good and covered. And then for me, this is so full that I knew this was going to bubble over in the oven. So I sit mine on a cookie sheet. And that way, if it does bubble over just a little bit, you won't end up with a mess in your oven. It'll be caught on your cookie sheet, okay? So you're going to pop that in the oven, 375 degrees, for about 30 minutes, okay? And this is what it looks like when it comes out. Y'all, look, I was so happy when this came. Every time I see melted cheese like this, it just makes me happy. This is my love language, y'all. Cheese is my love language. But seriously, this stuff is so good. This is, I'm telling you, the best baked ziti you're ever going to eat. If you follow this, make sure you use all the cheeses that I used. You're going to love this. But it is so super filling and cheesy and ooey. The flavor is just phenomenal, y'all. But anyway, this is it. Baked ziti. You got to make it, okay? That is all I've got for y'all today. I'll catch y'all on the next one. Bye, y'all.